ACE Essentials of Exercise Science for Fitness Professionals, Chapter 1, page 3, the Cardiovascular System. The cardiovascular or circulatory system is a closed-circuit system composed of the heart, blood vessels, and blood. Blood continuously travels a circular route through the heart into the arteries, then back to the capillaries and into the veins, and back to the heart. Together with the respiratory system, the heart and blood vessels deliver oxygen and nutrients to the body's tissues while also removing waste such as carbon dioxide and metabolic byproducts. Blood, the fluid component of the cardiovascular system, links the internal environment of the body to the external environment of the body by transporting materials between the two environments as well as among various cells and tissues. The liquid component of blood, called plasma, is responsible for carrying hormones, plasma proteins, food materials, e.g. carbohydrates, amino acids, lipids, ions, e.g. sodium, chloride, and bicarbonate, and gases, e.g. oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, throughout the body. The portion of the blood that is not plasma contains the formed elements, which include red blood cells, various types of white blood cells, and platelets. Given that blood feeds virtually all tissues, its primary function is transportation. In addition, the cardiovascular system plays an important role in temperature regulation and acid-base balance. Blood is transported throughout the body via blood vessels. The categories of blood vessels include the following: arteries and arterioles, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. So arteries starts with A, away starts with A. So remember, away from the heart by arteries. Veins and venules, which return oxygen-poor blood to the heart. Capillaries, which provide sites for gas, nutrient, and waste exchange between the blood and tissues. As blood leaves the heart to nourish the body, it is carried by the arteries. Large arteries, such as the aorta and its major branches, are thick and elastic and passively stretched as the blood is ejected from the heart. Arteriosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries and narrowing of the arteries due to plaque accumulation, which is commonly seen in older adults, contributes to arterial rigidity and decreases the artery's ability to expand. This condition gives way to an increase in blood pressure, which is commonly associated with aging. As arteries lead away from the heart, they branch extensively to form a tree of smaller microscopic vessels called arterioles. Eventually, arterioles develop into beds of much smaller structures, the capillaries. Capillaries have extremely thin walls and consequently allow the exchange of materials between the blood and the interstitial fluid between the cells. Interstitial fluid is the fluid between the cells. I believe it is not the same as plasma, which carries gases, hormones, and food materials, and plasma proteins and ions. Blood passes from the capillary beds to small venous vessels called venules. As venules lead back to the heart, they increase in size and become veins. Figure 1-2 Bravo. The walls of veins are thinner and less elastic than arterial walls. Commonly found inside the veins of the lower limbs are valves that allow blood to flow in only one direction, toward the heart. Blood leaving major veins the superior and inferior vena cava, empties directly into the heart, where it is transported to the lungs to pick up a fresh supply of oxygen. The heart serves as a pump, pushing the blood throughout the body. Pardon me. The heart serves as a pump, pushing the blood throughout the body. It is located between the lungs and lies just left of center behind the sternum. The adult heart is approximately the size of a closed fist. It is divided into 4 chambers and is often considered 2 pumps in one, as the right 2 chambers are responsible for pulmonary circulation and the left 2 chambers are responsible for systemic circulation. The chambers of the heart consist of 2 atria and 2 ventricles. The atria are small and located superior, or toward the head, to the ventricles, which make the bulk of the heart. The ventricles make the bulk of the heart. I'll read that again. The atria are small and located superior to the ventricles, which make up the bulk of the heart. The right atrium and the right ventricle form the right pump, while the left atrium and the left ventricle combine to form the left pump. Figure 1, Tech 3. The right and left sides of the heart are separated by a muscular wall called the interventricular septum, which prevents the mixing of blood from the 2 sides of the heart. To function as a pump, the heart must have both receiving and propulsion chambers and valves which direct blood flow through the heart. Blood movement within the heart is from the atria, the receiving chambers, to the ventricles, the propulsion chambers, and from the ventricles to the arteries. Backward movement of blood within the heart is prevented by 4 one-way valves. The right and left and atrioventricular valves connect the atria with the right and left ventricles, respectively. Backflow from the arteries into the ventricles is prevented by the pulmonary semilunar valve, the right ventricle, and the aortic semilunar valve of the left ventricle. The right side of the heart receives blood that is partially depleted of its oxygen content and contains an elevated level of carbon dioxide after having passed through the cells. This blood is then pushed into the lungs where it releases carbon dioxide. Sorry, I messed it up. I'll read it again. The right side of the heart receives the blood that is particularly depleted of its oxygen content and contains an elevated level of carbon dioxide after having passed through the cells. This blood is then pushed into the lungs where it releases its carbon dioxide in exchange for oxygen. This is called the pulmonary circuit. The left side of the heart receives newly oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumps it to the various tissues of the body through the systemic circuit. The specific pathway of blood through the heart starts as venous blood, or blood coming back to the heart through the veins. All the blood from the venous system enters the right atrium first. From there, blood enters the right ventricle, which pumps it to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. The exception to arteries carrying oxygen-rich blood. Okay, sorry, I just woke up. The specific pathway of blood through the heart starts as venous blood, blood coming back to the heart through the veins. All the blood from the venous system enters the right atrium first. From there, blood enters the right ventricle, which pumps it to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries, the exception to arteries carrying oxygen-rich blood. In the lungs, the blood picks up a fresh supply of oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide. The oxygenated blood returns from the lungs to the left atrium through the pulmonary veins, the exception to veins carrying oxygen-poor blood. From the left atrium, blood enters the left ventricle and is then pumped through the aorta to the rest of the body, except for the lungs. The cardiac cycle is the period from the beginning of one heartbeat to the beginning of the next. The right and left sides of the heart perform their pumping actions simultaneously. In other words, when the heart beats, both atria contract together to empty the blood into the ventricles. Approximately 0.1 seconds after the atria contract, both ventricles contract to deliver blood to the pulmonary and systemic circuits. The repeating phases of contraction and relaxation are called systole and diastole. Systole refers to the contraction phase of the cardiac cycle, during which the blood leaves the ventricles, while diastole refers to the relaxation phase of the cardiac cycle, during which blood fills the ventricles. Respiratory system. The structures of the respiratory system make it possible for the body to exchange gases between the external environment and the tissues. Specifically, the respiratory system provides a means to replace oxygen and remove carbon dioxide from the blood. In addition, it makes vocalization possible and plays an important role in the regulation of acid-base balance during exercise. The respiratory system is made up of the nose, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and lungs. Together, these structures form a group of passages that filter air and transport it into the lungs, where gas exchange occurs within microscopic air sacs called alveoli. Figure 1-4. Air enters the respiratory system through both the nostrils and the mouth. The air is warmed and passed through the pharynx, or the throat, and then the larynx, the area of the Adam's apple. Humans normally breathe approximately 5 to 6 liters of air per minute through the nose when at rest, but use the mouth as the primary passageway for air when ventilation is increased to approximately 20 to 30 liters per minute during exercise. I'll say that again. Humans normally breathe approximately 5 to 6 liters of air per minute through the nose when at rest, but use the mouth as the primary passageway for air when ventilation is increased to approximately 20 to 30 liters per minute during exercise. So at rest, 5 to 6 liters. During exercise, 20 to 30 liters per minute. From the larynx, air travels through the trachea, or the windpipe, which extends to the 5th or 6th thoracic vertebrae, where it divides into 2 smaller branches, the right and left primary bronchi. The primary bronchi divide into smaller secondary bronchi, one for each lobe of the lung. Secondary bronchi then branch into many tertiary bronchi that repeatedly branch further, resulting in tiny bronchioles. The bronchioles continue to branch to form terminal bronchioles, which ultimately divide into even smaller respiratory bronchioles that end in clusters of alveoli, i.e. thin-walled air sacs. The lungs contain approximately 300 million alveoli, which provide an enormous surface area for gas exchange. It is estimated that the total surface area available for diffusion in the human lung is about the size of a tennis court. The lungs are encased within the rib cage. These paired cone-shaped structures house the primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi, as well as the various bronchioles and alveoli. The two lungs are separated by a space called the mediastinum, which contains several important organs, including the heart, aorta, esophagus, and part of the trachea. The lungs rest on top of the most important muscle of inspiration. So remember, we are trying to take note of what these muscles do in support of, or what these systems do in support of exercise. And so we must remember that within the respiratory system, the most important muscle of inspiration is the diaphragm. It is the only skeletal muscle considered essential for life. When the diaphragm contracts, it forces the abdominal contents downward and forward, while external intercostals, or the groups of muscles between the ribs, lift the ribs outward. This action reduces the pressure in the membranes surrounding the lungs and in turn causes the lungs to expand. This expansion allows airflow into the lungs. At rest, the diaphragm and external intercostals perform most of the work of inspiration. However, during physical activity, accessory muscles of inspiration are recruited, including the pectoralis minor, scalenes, and the sternocleidomastoid. Sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so just remembering that the diaphragm, the pectoralis minor, the scalenes, and the sternocleidomastoid are the muscles that are the primary and accessory muscles of inspiration during exercise. By assisting the diaphragm and external intercostals, forgot the intercostals too, that's important. In effort to further increase the volume of the thorax, these muscles aid in inspiration. Expiration occurs passively during normal, quiet breathing, requiring no assistance from the muscle action. However, during exercise, expiration becomes active. Important muscles of expiration, such as the rectus abdominis, internal obliques, serratus posterior, and internal intercostals, are activated to help pull the ribcage downward and force air from the lungs by squeezing the abdominal organs upward against the diaphragm. The muscles of respiration adapt to regular exercise training, as do the locomotor skeletal muscles. Regular endurance exercise increases the oxidative capacity of respiratory muscles, which improves respiratory muscle endurance. This is important because respiratory muscles have been shown to fatigue with exercise, adversely affecting the ability to breathe during both moderate and high-intensity activities. Improving respiratory muscle endurance enhances exercise performance at various intensities. So I'm going to write that down. Okay. Muscles that assist or the verbiage act in respiration during exercise. Okay, so I'm just going to put inspiration is the diaphragm, the pectoralis minor, scalenes, and sternocleidomastoid. I believe they do mention that muscle in one of the videos, but I'm not sure. Okay, that's inspiration. So, inspiration during exercise. Diaphragm, pectoralis minor, scalene, sternocleidomastoid. Am I missing the intercostals? Perhaps. Yeah, intercostals. It says external intercostals. Okay. An expiration during exercise. Remember, it's passive at rest. It becomes active. Important muscles of expiration are rectus abdominis. And this. Internal obliques. Serratus. Posterior. Internal intercostals. Okay, so the external are for breathing in, and the internal for breathing out, which is kind of opposite. So, intercostals. And that is it. Okay, I'm going to end this video because it's nice to break it up into chunks. We're going into the digestive system next. We'll do digestive system and skeletal system, and then I'll take a break.